I'm Lauren Green for FoxNews.com. U.S. officials are signaling they might intervene in a civil case involving families of loved ones killed in terror attacks by Islamic extremists. Families won damages over $650 million in federal court against the Palestine Liberation Organization and the Palestinian Authority, for attacks that occurred in Israel. The DOJ will determine in the next few days whether to submit a statement of interest on the case. And here with reaction is former Assistant U.S. Attorney Fred Tecce. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so this is a civil case. Does it make sense for
Yes.
the DOJ to get involved in this?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they can't technically get involved. This is a civil lawsuit. People brought a lawsuit, that people whose families were victims of terrorism. They got a judgment. That judgment got tripled. So it's roughly $655 million. And the question is whether or not what's going to happen on appeal. And the government is trying to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to file a brief and say we agree on certain aspects of the appeal or we disagree. And we can talk about what those aspects are in a second. But that's really what's kind of at play.
I mean, what's the U.S. interest in this, really?
Well, what's the government's interest? Well, I'll tell you what's going on, Lauren, is that in a civil case, in virtually every civil case which I've been involved, the people who win, when you go up on appeal, these people have a money judgment. They have a $655 million judgment. When you go up on appeal, you're allowed to execute. So they could go after the PLO or the PA and try and get the $650 million by grabbing their assets, grabbing real estate, grabbing bank accounts. The way you stave that off is if you're someone like the PLO or the PA, is that you file a bond with the court. And generally the bond is about 125% of the judgment, but that's up to the judge. So the bond could be anywhere from $100 million to $700 or $800 million. And the government's trying to come in and say whether or not they think that the PLO or the PA should be allowed to or be required to post a bond on appeal.
All right, so the family's attorneys say that if the DOJ makes any sort of statement, it would be in favor of the PLO. Now, let me read you a statement by the Justice Department that just came out. As the filing states, the United States is considering whether to submit a statement of interest in the Sokolo matter. Any filing would be made on behalf of the United States, not on behalf of any other party. What do you make of that?
Well, what they're going to do is, it's interesting, when I was a federal prosecutor, I handled extraditions, and, we're trying to get people who are involved in huge cocaine conspiracies out of other countries, and the State Department and the government gets involved and they take positions. What I read on this is that the Justice Department is going to make a decision about whether or not they agree with the judge's ruling to post a bond. See, here's the part about posting the bond that's important. If they force the PLO or the PA to post a bond, which basically means they need to put that money someplace, that if they lose on appeal, that money instantaneously goes to the plaintiff. So if they post a bond of $300 or $400 million and they lose on appeal, the plaintiffs get their first $400 million. And I think what I'm worried about, because quite frankly, I think it would be highly inappropriate for the government to do this, what I'm worried about is that the Justice Department is going to come in and say, we don't think that the PLO or the PA should have to post a bond, which basically throws the victims under the proverbial legal bus.
This is a case where the DOJ or DOJ, where the government is actually siding with the Palestine Liberation Organization. Do you see that happening?
I can see that happen, because what happens is invariably the government wraps itself in this kind of notion that there are more important things than these people's rights to receive compensation for the slaughter of their families. And I think that's, for the Justice Department to take that position, I quite frankly think is repugnant. I mean, I understand why they're doing it. They have a bigger agenda, and unfortunately for these plaintiffs, it doesn't include their right to receive compensation for what happened to them. But I think the Justice Department ought to just sit down and be quiet.
All right, you say they have a bigger agenda. How do you see this case playing out?
Interesting. The judges, our federal judges in this country, have lifetime appointment, and our founding fathers really knew what they were doing when they did that. So they're not beholden to anybody. So they run the risk. The Justice Department runs the risk. If they tell the judge, "Oh, don't require them to take a bond," the great thing about having lifetime appointments is the judge can basically thumb his nose at them and say, "Too bad. I've looked over this case, and I don't really care about the government's agenda with the PLO or the PA, and I'm going to force them to file a bond."
Fred Tecce, thank you so much.
Lauren, thank you very, very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you want to check out FoxNews.com for more on this developing story. I'm Lauren Green, and thanks for watching.